These days, I'm doing some reading on Kindle, and sometimes, I listen to audiobooks. But when all is said and done, there's nothing like a real book in your hand. And I'd just like to talk to you about a writer that I discovered for the first time in 2003. And he went on to achieve some degree of fame, but I don't know if any of his subsequent books, I've read a couple of them, compared with his very first novel. And the novel is The Kite Runner. And here is the book that I own, and it is the first edition. I had the pleasure of listening to him for the very first time at the International Festival of Authors in Toronto. And I managed to, of course, see him afterwards, and he signed, and it was lovely because he signs in English as well as in the Farsi script, I guess the language would be Dari. I don't know if you can see this quite well, but there we are. So it's a signed copy, and it's a first edition. So one of my friends tells me it's worth something. I don't know. I mean, do people still collect books, or will people in the future be collecting books? Will people in the future be reading books? I don't know. But books are so lovely, and it's so precious to hold something like this in your hand. It means something. And I will just read this dedication. He dedicates this. It's so beautiful. This book is dedicated to Haris and Farah, both the noor of my eyes, the light of my eyes, and to the children of Afghanistan. Okay. Yes, Lord knows that country has been through so much over the years, and of course it continues to suffer, and it is extremely sad, and sad for me with associations with that part of the world. I am intending to read something that I wrote at the time. It was probably written about almost 20 years ago, and it appeared in the New Age literary section of the New Age newspaper in Bangladesh. Okay, this was my review. Born in Kabul, Khaled Hosseini lives and works as a physician in California. The Kite Runner, his first published novel, is worth reading primarily for its depiction of life in a Kabul that no longer exists. The narrator, Amir, is presented in terms of two relationships: to Baba, his father, and to Hassan, a servant boy who is the kite runner of the story. The depiction of both relationships is somewhat marred by cliché and melodrama. The father is something of a legend, a man who is reputed to have fought a black bear single-handedly. The son, a studious and mild-mannered young man, is a disappointment to the father. Their relationship is given an interesting dimension through Hosseini's linking it with the story of Rustam and Sohrab, which ends with Rustam unwittingly killing his son. Amir says that he personally couldn't see the tragedy in Sohrab's fate. After all, didn't all fathers in their secret hearts harbor a desire to kill their sons? The chief motivation in the young Amir's life is the desire to win his father's love, and his attempt to achieve this involves his betrayal of Hassan. Nothing was free in this world. Maybe Hassan was the price I had to pay, the lamb I had to slay to win Baba. Although Hassan is a servant in the household, there is a close relationship and friendship between the two boys. Hassan and I fed from the same breasts. We took our first steps on the same lawn, in the same yard, and under the same roof, we spoke our first words. Amir's first word was Baba, whereas Hassan's first word was Amir. Both Hassan's absolute devotion to Amir and Amir's betrayal of him border on the melodramatic, and the working out of the pattern of guilt and redemption is somewhat derivative and contrived. Although at various points, Hosseini, through his narrator, reminds the reader that what he is recounting is not the fantasy of subcontinental cinema. Aspects of the plot, such as Amir's final encounter with the black-hearted villain Asif, seem strained. At one point, one feels that Hosseini is trying too hard to tell a good story. He is at his best when he simply depicts things the way they were. The picture he presents of the way of life in Kabul before the Russians came is truly memorable. No doubt, Hosseini calls on memories of his own childhood as he describes eating boiled eggs with kofta sandwiches at a picnic table on the banks of Gargha Lake, learning the intricacies of namaz from another unsavory tutor, watching the sport of buzkashi, in which horsemen wrangle over the carcass of a goat, chasing after the Kochi nomads who passed through Kabul on their way to the mountains, seeing Marjan, the lion at the Kabul Zoo, and eating at Dad Khuda's Kabul kebab house afterward. And above all, the whole business of kite flying, building kites, flying them, fighting tournaments and kite running, or chasing the kites after they were cut. Hosseini describes the leisurely and affluent lifestyle of aristocratic Afghans with loving detail. For instance, in the description of the house built by Baba, with its marble floors, mosaic tiles, hand-picked in Isfahan, gold-stitched tapestries, and crystal chandelier. At the other extreme, of course, is the mud shack in which Hassan lives. In his evocation of the past, Hosseini particularly celebrates the onset of winter. Here is what I do on the first day of snowfall every year. I step out of the house early in the morning, still in my pajamas, hugging my arms against the chill. I find the driveway, my father's car, the walls, the trees, the rooftops, and the hills buried under a foot of snow. I smile. The sky is seamless and blue. The snow so white, my eyes burn. I shovel a handful of the fresh snow into my mouth, listen to the muffled stillness, broken only by the cawing of crows. Winter is in fact the season that children loved, not only because it meant a respite from school, but also because it used to be the season of kite flying in the days before it was banned by the Taliban. Hosseini is also impressive in his delineation of the expatriate Afghan community in California, where he and Baba eventually end up, along with other Afghan families, among them those who were once the elite of Kabul. These families make ends meet with whatever jobs are available. Baba, for instance, pumps gas. And on weekends, they flog used goods at the San Jose flea market. I ran the stand sometimes as Baba sauntered down the aisle, hands respectfully pressed to his chest, greeting people he knew from Kabul, mechanics and tailors, selling hand-me-down wool coats and scraped bicycle helmets, alongside former ambassadors, out-of-work surgeons, and university professors. Later in the novel, Amir returns to Afghanistan. The nightmare of the Taliban era is graphically described with the by now familiar images of execution and torture staged in soccer stadiums. There is also a poignant moment involving a beggar who turns out to be a former university professor and a one-time colleague of Amir's mother. In the end, Hosseini's novel succeeds best in those elements that seem to be grounded in the writer's own experience. Where it is weakest is in the contrivances of its plot, with its variations on the prince and pauper story. When the last page is turned, what stands out is the expatriate's nostalgic memory of a place that no longer exists except in the mind. And I'm sure that that will resonate with some of you who, like me, are expatriates, with a nostalgic memory of a place that exists in our minds.